There's a lot we've learned over the years making videos.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with my new softbox. It's like my buddy, my pal.
Nice. I see the one behind you.
Oh, can you? Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah,
They're
I've got
good.
one
You
right
like
to
them?
my right. I've got 3 of them.
You had 3.
Yeah, they're a pain in the butt to assemble, unfortunately. But they're also like $40 each. It's pretty crazy. They're basically like perfect lighting. It's just that they're not super convenient.
Wow, that's way cheaper than this. Is it just what kind of bulb is inside of it?
The bulbs are super cheap. They're just white calibrated light, but it's like little LED bulbs, or not LED bulbs even. They're just the curly ones. What are those? Hydrogen or something? Incandescent?
Incandescent, yes. Really? They're not... Do they get hot? Incandescent gets hot.
I think they get a little hot, but it's not too bad. I can't really tell.
Nice.
But there's 4 of them, and it's funny. I'm looking at the monitor of myself right now, and even though I only have one softbox on, the room is full. So my friend Chloe is a cinematographer, and she came over and helped me learn about all this stuff. And dude, I have these 2 windows here, and like my apartment doesn't even get that much sunlight, but just having these 2 windows, it throws it all off, basically. Like, if you can't control the light in your setup and you really want to achieve a certain effect, it's really hard. So it was fun that night after the sun went down, and you just have the full control of like the 3 boxes, and you do like the key, fill, and kicker kind of thing, and you put like a gel on it. It's pretty awesome what you can do.
Understood like 4 of those words.
But like, I have sunlight coming through, and it like totally screwing up the temperature of the light. So when you try to like color correct it, she was like doing this, and she's like literally like a professional. She has like she's like recorded Brad Pitt interviews before and stuff like that. And she's like, "Oh yeah, well the light is like green." And I was like, "What do you mean it's green? It's like sunlight coming in from the window." She's like, "Well yeah, but there's all these leaves right here." I'm like, "So there's a green light?" And she's on Final Cut, and she's like, "See, look." And she opens the color corrector thing, and there's a wheel where it shows you the complementary colors. So you have green on this side, and on the opposite, it's like magenta or something like that. Mm-hmm. So she's like, "See, if I remove green, like you might look at it and say, oh, this is like looks normal. But if you actually look at the wall in the back, which is supposed to be white, it actually does kind of look green. And it's because of the leaves." And then she's like, "See, I subtract the green, and then it's like it turns it into white. It's crazy."
Should you like always shoot something that has white in it so that you can then use that as like a baseline to like correct?
Yeah, well, the ideal is that you control the light in the room, so you black out curtain every external source, and then these lights are at 5,000, so they're at 5,000 Kelvin.
That's pretty blue, isn't it?
So you just know it. That's like daylight, basically. It's basically what daylight is. Okay. But yes, it has some blue in it. But basically, the camera has a setting where you set the white balance, and you can dial it right into 5,000. So she's like, "This is the best way to do it. You just do that." And so you have the lights in the room, you know, are 5,000, and you dial your camera in, and that's it. You're done.
Oh, wow. So the camera has a temperature setting for the lights.
Yeah, it has a white balance setting.
Like, but that translates to temperature of the light.
It's exactly. That's what white balance is. It boils down to one number.
Oh, cool.
There's some things I still don't understand. Like the green light is like, she was like, "Oh yeah, it's like 3,200, right?" But I can turn like one of my little accent lights to 3,200, or like even the Elgato key light, right? It can be like 3,200, but it's not green. So how can 2 lights be 3,200 Kelvin and one be green and one be like a warm color? And I kind of asked her, and she was kind of like, there actually would be green in it if you like looked it up or something on like a. I still don't fully understand it, but it's really complicated.
I have a question. Is temperature just like a color index? That's what you're making it sound like when you just described that. I always thought temperature was
2 guys don't talk about stuff they have no clue about. Yeah. Welcome to the 2 Guys podcast. Here we talk about stuff we have no clue about. It's like, you know how in the Elgato light you can drag the thing from like 5,000 and it looks like daylight, and then you drag it down to like 3,000 and it looks like your lamps. Oh, like, see, I have this lamp on right now. I just totally blew it. Oh, see, look how much of a difference that made. It's crazy, man. Once you start seeing like the smallest little lamp will just change everything. Like this little scene I shot in my YouTube video last week, I think I had like the Elgato in there, but I also had, like the lamp from my microwave on. And she was like, you can't have that on. It like throws everything off. And I was like, it's a tiny little lamp. It's just giving me a little light. And she's like, you need help. It's crazy, man. Like once you get the environment controlled and it's truly like dark and you start playing with these things. Also, I realize why softboxes are the way they are. One is to give you a big area because the bigger the area, the softer the light. But the other is like the sides are black. So it's so that you can direct them. So I watched this video on YouTube talking about how to use softboxes and like, you get this approach, like this angle where it's like it has some part of your face, but then this part is dark. Right now, I have two windows right here, and so they're just filling everything. So if you look at my shot, it's all basically lit, and you don't have much control because of the ambient light. But if you did blackout of the windows, you can like turn the box. So like if the box was here, the box can see like all of my face. So then it's like lights it evenly. So then you start moving it like this and it sees less of my face. And you can even turn it like this. So it's the sides of the box that are black and they're aluminum that actually lets you direct the light. And so it's the whole point of the box is to not spill the light out. It's so that when you point it in a certain way, it changes. Even if it's horizontal or vertical, because it's like longer than it is wide. If you do this or you do this, it completely changes like the shadow that's cast in the back because more of the light can see around you. So it's really fascinating, man. It's like so much of this has to do with light. And she was like, it basically is so much. Basically, like you could have everything in a scene dialed in, the camera dialed in. And if it's not lit correctly, it's just you're hopeless. Like you're done, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to get to have some better lighting on my dumb B-roll footage that I'm putting at the beginning of my videos, like me making cocktails in the afternoon, but it's fun.
Nice.
And it's just fun to learn it. But yeah, there's still some things I need to research, like does light boil down to a single number? So you were asking about the white balance. If you have your camera on auto and you just take a picture, that's why when your camera's on auto and you take a picture outside or you take a picture inside, it looks good because the camera is doing its best to adjust the white balance to the correct temperature. It is a temperature in Kelvin, and it's trying to adjust the white balance such that white things look white, basically, is what it is. And that translates down to everything. Skin tones look like skin tones. And apparently like the human eye is really good at seeing skin tones that don't look like skin tones. It's very strange. It stands out to us the most. So when you white balance, that's like the one thing you want to focus on. And again, the best way to do it is to have all the same temperature of light in the room and just set the camera to that temperature. And then it's not even a question. So
interesting. So the things that you're shooting don't affect the white balance. It's the light in the room that affects it. Correct. And Very
if you have a footage with a person in it, like in After Effects or Final Cut or whatever, you can choose points on the person's skin and say this should be skin tones.
Like the white.
Yeah. Or like the color wheel has like a line where like normal skin tones fall, so you can adjust it so that the skin tones you selected fall on that line. But there's still some things I don't understand. Like, is light just one number? How is that possible? How can there be green light if it's the same temperature as blue light?
Yeah.
So I need to read a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
But it's pretty fun though, and it's just such a crazy, wild world. I mean, it's just there's so much to it. You know what I mean? There was a bunch of other interesting things she said I wrote down, but yeah, pretty cool stuff. So what you been up to, man? You've been white water rafting. You're going on a trip soon, man. Time to get the heck out of the city.
Yeah, I went kayaking, not whitewater rafting.
Nice.
Same thing though. Yeah, it's pretty good. Definitely the the local vacations are a big hit this year.
Yeah, so. Totally. I just booked a trip to Seattle. I don't know if that was wise or not, but I'm going.
Nice.
The last plane I rode was pretty empty, so I feel like it was okay.
Have you been upgrading your seats, or do you just like expect the whole row to yourself?
Yeah, this time I didn't find it worth it because this time I just went all lowest row because it's like the last time I went on the plane, I literally got the whole row to myself. So why spend an extra whatever,
Nice. Let's see. What I've been working on Gatsby stuff. I actually
hate Gatsby.
Yeah, hate Gatsby. No, I really like Gatsby, especially the work that I did this week. Building a documentation site, and it's a bunch of markdown files, Swagger files, and that's sort of the content that we start with, and we have to build a whole doc site out of it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just like the whole thought process of building a Gatsby site is it's funny, like if I was like doing this in React, it is a React app, mm-hmm. but if the only tool I had was React, I would be doing something like, I don't know, like storing data using like JSX as a way to store data, not so much as like presentation, but as data, and then like React,
which we've done before.
Children. Yeah. Or I'd be like, fetching data from a backend, rendering it, like fetching data from a backend, and then doing like client-side transforms to render everything. And it's just a lot. Whenever you do stuff like that, there's always like this weird translation, right? It doesn't feel natural when it's the only tool you have. Like you can obviously make it work, but it doesn't feel natural. Where with like the Gatsby site, it feels really natural. The amount of React I wrote this week is like nothing. It's maybe like, I don't know, 150 lines, 200 lines, mm-hmm. but doing everything from like file transforms to building up the data structures to like, I literally build up the whole navigation as a data structure, as a tree at build time. So I'm not thinking about, the React. Like React is just going to take that tree, loop over it, and render a bunch of links for the docs. But
are you saying you've managed to carve out a back-end role as a front-end developer for yourself?
Dude, it is so much easier to think of like, I have all these folders and all these markdown files in a folder. Like, how do I build a nav off this? And it's just so much easier to think like in terms of like Node APIs to read all that data, get it into a data structure, put that data structure in GraphQL, and then from the front end, query GraphQL for that data structure. Just so much easier than like...
Because it just answers a lot of questions for you, basically?
You just know, like, there's a clear step. Like, think about when we do this stuff, we do this stuff with, like, JSX, where we do this stuff where it's like we only have the client, and the client just... You know what? I'm having a hard time, like, describing this, but when you write, like, JSX is, like, a data storage format. So your JSX doesn't map to HTML. You like iterate over it with React Children.
Yeah.
It's like a nice data structure.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of weird stuff. You have like components that components that only exist to like carve out spaces for their children. It has nothing to do with presentation, but there's just all this mess of React code. It's not bad. I mean, it works.
Interesting.
Also, just think with like add-on.
Yeah, that's
docs.
true. Even in my work journal, I have like a entry.section, entry.item, and there's a lot of that. That is like,
exactly. So like nav item, like you just avoid all that.
Interesting.
Think of add-on docs. You need to read in the content before you can build the nav. Right. And so I don't have any of that problem whatsoever. By the time I'm ready to build the nav, I have everything, and it's in a data structure in GraphQL.
I see what you're saying. Query. I see what you're saying. So, it's basically like the whole thing about how it MDX Gatsby plugin puts like handy things like the table of contents or like the heading sections into GraphQL. Whereas if you just had React and you were trying to build something off of MDX, you might find yourself in a situation where you have to render to know what to render, which is like the thing you want to always avoid because that's like the hardest thing in the world. Now, if it was coming from an API, you would need to do that. But basically, you're saying you don't need that because, the data is not in the templating layer. You don't have, React doesn't have to, you pull the data out of the UI in a sense, so that by the time you're rendering, you have a static piece of data that you can iterate over and render from.
Yeah, I think the headings example that you gave is the best way to highlight this. Like, you have an MDX file in React, you need to show all the headings. that requires rendering, which, you know, it leads to a lot of messy code. It's doable.
Right.
Absolutely doable, but messy. So yeah, that's been good. And I really like, we've talked about this before, but the how Gatsby nudges you towards a bunch of APIs to put data into this content mesh it's just really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it answers a lot of questions, you know. I was answering some Mirage questions and looking at the REPL and stuff, and one of my buddies was telling me about where he thought like the docs could use some improvements and where people get stuck up on, and a lot of it is like the serializer stuff. And I was just realizing like the serializer layer in general is just such a massive bike shed area, which is why JSON API was created. But that didn't really solve the problem in the sense that today the average team is still making their own API format. And so I think one of the benefits of Gatsby doing all this stuff for you is that there's a lot of questions you don't have to answer. How am I going to fetch related data? I mean, a lot of the plugins just do that for you. But even just the idea of like pushing them into a content mesh and then querying them from GraphQL is really cool. You know, it answers so many questions for you.
Yeah. I you know, there's definitely like, I had to like shape the data that I'm pushing in there.
Yeah.
And
right.
I'm writing the queries for it. So there's definitely the, it is like handcrafting
right.
your own API. You know, the GraphQL doesn't really help me there. It's more.
Well, it does help you in the sense of not saying like, should this be lowercase ID or underscore ID or,
okay.
you know, included and side loads and root and embedded. Like, it's going to be whatever you do. But once it's in there, the question of how to get it and everything is it's all typed. It's all
once
there.
Once I shape it and it's in there, that's done. Yep.
Yeah.
Also, too, when I write this stuff, like I literally make a data structure, I push it into the content mesh, and then I go over to graphical and I just start querying. And once I have my query, I just copy and paste it into the React app. So like, dude, I'm really not writing much React for this.
That's funny.
And graphical is great for this.
Yeah.
Especially like, you know, I have a fairly good understanding of like the default nodes that Gatsby provides. So I know like how to query multiple things and what I need to like look for and join together. But even then, like just, working with a data structure in Node, pushing it into this and then querying it with like a graphical interface, it's pretty sweet.
What's also nice about that is if I were to look at this project and you've been working on it for the last 2 weeks and I haven't seen any of this aspect of it, I'm going to be able to follow it because, again, the guardrails are there. There's only so many areas. There's only so many APIs that you use to push data into the content mesh. There's only so many ways to query it. It's going to be the same way we query all data from it. So, like, again, you have these boundaries and these the bumper lanes in a bowling alley where you're like, it's just carved out for you. Whereas if you were to look at add-on docs and try to understand how to have to understand how we get the data in from the API docs and all that stuff, it's just going to be, you're going to be able to figure it out. It's not like bad code, but it's just, there's no conventions there around this stuff. I think the content mesh is like the biggest value proposition of Gatsby.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like web browser servers and HTTP, where like HTTP is just such a clean boundary.
Yeah.
I think of the content mesh as the same thing. You have like content that you're generating and then a React app, and that content mesh just sits right in the middle, and that's how these two things communicate.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So if you had to do a new project like this, if you had to start miragejs.com tomorrow, would you use Gatsby or Next? I mean, I guess it depends on a lot of things, but
yeah, I have 2 Next apps I'm also working on. Next, it's really hard to beat Next for I'm building an application. If you're building something, I know that Next has static generation and all that, but if you're building something that has static generation, I would just use Gatsby.
Just because it's going to save you some time with all this stuff.
It's just like the 80% of stuff you're going to have, like MDX. It's just it works so well out of the box. It just works so well. Where Gatsby falls apart is where you're trying to build an app, and again, like Just like I know you can build a whole bunch of static websites with Next. You can totally build an app with Gatsby, but it's just not, it's not the happy path. There's like, if you're trying to do like, you're trying to build like app shell pages in Gatsby, it just gets weird. Where like that sort of stuff in Next is just
where it shines.
Happy path, sweet.
Yeah.
So that's I asked myself that question, and that's basically my decision tree these days.
Interesting.
And there's always like, MirageJS.com is a great example, right? Like, most of it, 60% of it, 70% of it is static content.
Right.
And then we have the REPL, which is an app.
Right.
And so it's hard to.
It would be nice if it would be nice if it was, there are some Next features that we wanted when we were building that, or that would have been useful that we didn't have, or Next things like the SSR pages that would make it easier to use. And the Gatsby stuff feels like it gets in the way a little bit,
Yeah. Also too, I think like just sort of like how I view web development, I'm more aligned with like the folks that work on Next.
Yeah.
And I like the way that Next approaches these problems. And like I said, I know that you can build static sites in Next, and it's not a bad experience. So I think, if you told me like, yeah, there's going to be some dynamic app stuff and some static stuff, I would probably say, yeah, why not? Why not use Next?
Right. It does seem like it's also a bit of a safer bet for some reason, just because it's scoped. It's like it knows its scope, better, I feel like. Gatsby sometimes feels like it's all up and down the ladder of abstraction. Don't you agree?
So,
Next is like low level. Next is like,
yeah, I do agree because Next is low level, but I don't know, man. I wouldn't want to write this MDX stuff in Next.
Yeah, I know. Adam and Brad, the guy who worked on the Tailwind plugin, Brad is working on rebuilding Tailwind CSS.com as a Next site.
Cool.
Whole thing. So I'll be interested to see how that turns out, because that's like I think it's a very similar use case to like MirageJS.com.
Oh yeah.
They have a lot. Doc site, right? They have a lot of content. I do think he had to do some stuff with Webpack, basically, pretty early on, which we've never had to do.
And that, just hearing that would be enough for me to say like, okay.
Yeah. Unless we can find
I'll check in next year.
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's so funny. We're at like 10, 15 years ago, I'd be like, let me at it. I'll be up until 4 a.m. hacking this Webpack stuff. And now I'm like, is there a 22-year-old version of me that wants to tear into this? Because I definitely do not. I'm going to make myself a drink and play some Overcooked instead of playing. And I'll just use this plugin from Gatsby and leave the Webpack config to y'all. No, but the Next stuff is really cool. And it's interesting. Yeah, man, the API stuff is so interesting. I was just thinking about it because someone was tweeting about Mirage and, getting far with it. And then, it's time to work on the API server. There's just so many. Also, I was thinking like, there's like some little apps that I want, ideas that I have that I want to just kind of bang out for our own productivity, for like the podcast, or like helping communicate with folks that we have making Ember-Map videos now. And I'm like, I'm not going to I just want to use like Firebase. Like I almost want to like rebuild Ember-Map on Firebase.
Dude, I have 2 Amplify apps, and I'm, Amplify and Firebase are, for the sake of this conversation, are the same thing, right?
Yeah, except they're not.
They're the same thing. And but I've completely changed.
Doesn't it feel like every API server you've ever written is completely ossified, and like in stone, like set in stone, that you don't want to touch with like a 10-foot pole, and is like,
yeah, because you write enough of them, and you still have ones from 6 years ago that are live in production, and you get emails about them, and you're just like, oh, why? Yeah,
like if all of Ember-Map's backend was in Firebase right now, it would just feel a lot less. It would feel different, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of the oldest like React and Ember code we have on the front end. And it's like, even that doesn't feel risky, because it's like, I don't know. Again, it could be, I know we had this conversation before. It could be because we are in the front end more, but the front end is like your product. It's always like, we've changed Ember Maps front end a bunch because like we've updated the styles and like used upgraded Tailwind because we wanted new. It's like the product. We've added features to it, like video views, and like we've changed the player and like the grid layout and stuff like that. It's always going to evolve. It is like your app, and so it feels less like. This is one aspect of like the front end back end division that I actually like because it feels like you could just take the back end. It's not realistic to like just throw away the back end and switch it, but like it's nice that there's a boundary there because really like conceptual, like from my perspective, the back end code is like so much of it is stuff that's not really about like your product, in the same way the front end is.
Yeah. So I don't like. I think the backend is part of your app, and I don't think you can ignore it. But I think it is the most like boring rote. Like it is just you go to write authentication code, and you spend all day writing auth code, and then writing tests for it. Yeah, and it's like then you use a service like Amplify or Firebase, and it's like one line of declarative auth, or even something like Hasura. You check a checkbox for auth, and it's just like all that boring work. That's, by the way, it's not only it's boring, but it's also like high risk. It's high stakes. Like the auth stuff is a high stakes stuff in your app. So it's like boring and high stakes, and it takes a lot of time. And it just feels like wheel reinventing. So I think that's why I don't like that part of code. And when I'm in the back end, that's mostly what I'm doing. I'm like,
you're trying to just enable the front. You're trying to get back to the front end as fast as possible. Basically.
Yeah. All the feature, I mean, that's something you nailed, right? All the feature work happens on the front end. You usually need a back end to support that feature work, but like, you can imagine having like a different back end system that you don't have to write a bunch of code to get those features done.
Yeah. I saw you tweet about Amplify. So it looked pretty cool. Is that the first time you used Amplify Auth?
I've been using it for, I don't know, maybe like a month now. But
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It's
built into Amplify. So like you're using Amplify for both the data queries and the auth. So it's all together.
It's all together. It's all awesome. It's all part of Amplify.
You don't have to read 8 guides on how JWTs work.
You have to read 17 guides on how Amplify works.
Yeah,
but you don't have to know anything about JWTs.
God, why don't those people? It feels so frustrating, man.
I don't want to do this in a snarky way, but I seriously want to know, is like Amplify meant as a product for like everyday developers like you and I to use, or is Amplify like it's a product meant for internally Amazon employees to use, but it is structured
technical.
in such a way. It's structured in such a way that can be like an AWS service, and its boundaries are really good, so it can be an AWS service. There's like the snarkiness in there. I like it. I feel a lot more confident with it than I did 2 months ago, but man, like you learn a lot as you're going through those docs.
Yeah. Interesting. It's almost like the kind of work you did at TED, where like you have like lower level, far reaching concerns, maybe like coordinating systems or like different apps. But like as an app developer, it definitely doesn't feel like it's laser focused on, whereas like the Firebase case is like laser focused on that. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't it feel more like that?
No, it's
for app developers.
It's for app developers. It's for sure. It's for app developers. It's not,
I know
it's really big surface area. Yeah. It's like Ember versus React, right? They're both made for like SPAs, but like Ember, you just have to know so many more things before you can be successful with it.
Yeah.
Not that Ember is bad or anything. It's just that's, surface area.
Right.
The Amplify Auth stuff it's amazing. You first of all, you define your schema in GraphQL, and that creates a bunch of API endpoints as database tables, everything for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then, you can also define indexes there, how you query the data.
So how do you query the data once you have those set up? Do you write GraphQL queries, or do you use their library, like data repo,
so
fluent dot find all, whatever?
You write GraphQL queries, but not really, because when they take your GraphQL schema and generate both queries and mutations from that schema, and they generate like multiple queries based off all the indexes you define. So it's pretty sweet. You have a GraphQL file, you can open it up, you can reference it, you can run graphical. So you're thinking in terms of GraphQL, but when you actually, I've never written a line of GraphQL in my Amplify apps. I just import, find all posts, get all posts from queries, and that's a file that they auto generate that.
It's a function that executes the right GraphQL query.
Yeah. So then they have a API library that you pass that GraphQL into. But again, you're never writing this GraphQL. You're just importing the query and passing it to this API library. And you can think of that API library for just like as a fetch call, basically. You can await it. It's got data, errors, all that good stuff.
So what if you wanted like, I only want the name and the picture of the recipe, but not the ingredients for the homepage? You don't do that kind of thing.
I think you could, if you did want it like that, I think you could write that query, but
you could drop down to raw GraphQL.
Yeah, I haven't done that, so I don't want to say like, oh yeah, that's totally kosher.
It's not the happy path.
Yeah, I just import get all recipes from queries and execute that query.
So you say it's GraphQL, but you're not actually thinking in Graph. Are you thinking in GraphQL, or you're reading their guides for how to?
You're not.
You said graphical is part of the experience.
Yeah.
Because that's where you can find out what queries are defined on the schema so that you can import it.
So when I need to find out what queries are defined, I just open up that queries JS file that they generate. And when I need to find the mutations. Also,
and that's that's a .gql file?
Yeah, it might be a .js file. Yeah, I think it's a .js file.
But it exports
a bunch of GraphQL, yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't done any like crazy queries, but as far like that API library that they give you seems to support everything. And I also don't like selectively fetch. Like if I need a recipe, I don't think about like, oh, I'm only displaying the title on this page. I just get all the recipes.
So the actual implementation of the API effectively could be swapped out with REST.
Yeah, they
wouldn't even care about it.
Well, they have a version. They do have a REST version. When you're generating these API files, they ask you like, would you like to define this as REST or as GraphQL?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So yes, it could totally be swapped out as REST. I do think in terms of GraphQL because
What do you mean when you say that?
Because your schema file is GraphQL and you as a developer maintain that schema file.
Oh,
so you are writing all the types, and then they have these directives that allow you to decorate your types. So you can use a directive to create relationships between two types. So you can query all recipes and let's say, and their ingredients, where ingredients is another type. They also have Auth.
I was going to say, that was your tweet, right? The permissions was a directive.
Yeah. So
I haven't used directives yet. That's a GraphQL thing?
I've only used this in context of Amplify, so I don't know if it's part of GraphQL or if it's like GraphQL plus something else. I will say that my VS Code crashes when I open these files with just these weird errors about Prisma syntax highlighting, and I don't have Prisma installed and a Prisma extension installed, so something somewhere is barfing on these directives.
Interesting. It does look like part of the spec.
Part is cool.
We need a new feature in GraphQL called directive. Directive can be attached to a field or fragment. Inclusion can affect execution of the query in any way the server desires. Man, they really nailed the boundaries with GraphQL. Like to have that concept, but to not have it mean anything. It's pretty interesting.
They look and feel just like decorators in JavaScript. So cool. You have one called Auth. And right there, I get to define, like in my GraphQL type, who has access to this. And it's
pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, it's great that they there's concepts of like public and private. So public is everyone, private is logged in users. They have owner, so it's like the person that creates it. So you can say like a comment, the person that has write access to a comment is its creator, so they can update it and delete it and so on. And then they have groups, and you can think of those as like admins. And man, it's the fastest I've ever added auth. And I don't know. So this is actually something
crazy.
that's kind of funny. You're like adding all these auth rules, right? So you're like, you take something like comment, and let's say you're building like a private site. You can take something like a comment and say like only logged in users have access to it. The owner, the person that creates it, has full CRUD, and then admins have full CRUD. And I don't write tests for this, right? Because it's just like, that's it. That what I just said is like the declarative @auth directive rule in my schema.
Yeah.
I'm always worried, like, I actually don't know. I don't know that this comment can't be overwritten by another user. I trust that like I got the directive right, but I don't. It's weird. Like there was a very weird feeling deploying this code.
But in the same way that you don't know if React is going to update the DOM when you say return P, but that's just the contract that the library gives you.
That's interesting, but it's a lot easier to test that.
Yeah.
Like React, I can just go to the page, reload, click around, but like, I'm not going to log in. I'm not going to create a comment and then log in as like 4 different accounts and try to delete that comment.
I see. Or then if you are, you might as well be writing tests at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then not only that, but like the delete comment button is like literally hidden in the UI, right? If you're not the user that made the comment or an admin, like I just hide the delete button. Why would I show you a button that you don't have access to? So like there's just no even real opportunity for me to be like, oh, let me try to delete this comment. Like I would have to open
test it. Oh yeah.
I'd have to like open DevTools and like run the. I guess I could just show the button, right?
But you're talking about right from the server's perspective, and is the API endpoint secure?
Yeah, and
if someone were to do a curl request or something,
exactly. And like obviously, like I trust the Amplify libraries. I trust the code, but I don't trust myself. Like I might have botched the directive, right? I have like 4 different permissions: public, private, owner, and admin. Very easy for me to make mistakes there.
Interesting. You almost want them to. I wonder if you could use graphical, or you almost want a tool like that to like test your permissions out.
Yeah, maybe like graphical where I can generate a few. I was also thinking like a thing that would be awesome is if I could like take a schema file and just paste it into some text area somewhere, and it could show me like little infographic of like this thing is not readable, and it not readable from users that aren't logged in, and this thing is updatable by these users.
That's interesting. You know what that makes me think of is like X state visualization, and the idea being that like you can't write tests for every combinatorial version of a user moving through a UI. So at some point you have to accept that you cannot write tests for everything there. And so you want to surface those things in a way that you could see it earlier if there was a faulty line of logic from one box to the next, or an impossible state or an impossible thing that a UI could get into. So maybe that is the answer. Because as you were talking, I was kind of thinking like, no, you definitely want to write tests for this. And like also when we're used to writing API servers, it's like, it's just really nice to be able to say like, create me an admin, create me someone on Sam's team, create me someone on Ryan's team. Ryan creates a new person, and then have Sam check if he can see it, and he can't. So like that feels good.
Yeah, it feels great. It's
also a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It's like it feels great because it's like the high stakes code, right? And it feels good that you have that tested. But like, I don't write tests for my Rails validations, right? I might write a test that says like if you enter an invalid email address, I clearly display an error message that's telling you your email, because that's like a user flow thing. But I don't try to like save. I don't like new up a model and try to save it and then.
That's perfect. No, that's a perfect thing. You don't test that an arbitrary SQL string to your database could be made with a null value for email. Yeah.
Yes. Exactly.
Even though that database server exists and like someone could get there. I mean, I guess it's not public, so that's different.
But I trust Rails. I trust that Rails is doing the right thing. And if there's going to be a mistake here, it's going to be me not displaying the error message to the user. And so that's what I tend to focus a test on.
Maybe at the end of the day, there's always mistakes, and the sheer amount of hours that we save by just writing 3 lines of code versus spending a month or 2 on an API server is like, yeah, it's just better.
Yeah.
That's really interesting though, man. I haven't really thought a ton about that, but it certainly seems like, let's say you were building something like Drip, where there's like automations and all this stuff. You would want to test that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm trying to think of like the most complex, what's like the most complex app we've worked on that has like complex auth rules?
We've done some client apps. We did a client app last year where there were like, they were like employees and assistants and managers and all these
and
people.
And like the assistants could have certain people that they could see their things of, right?
Right, but they weren't their managers, so
right.
They didn't have everything, but
right.
They had some things. It was like, and I am an assistant role, so I get write access to this stuff. So that was kind of complicated, and
yeah,
I think we used Pundit for that.
Yeah,
and that again, that was not that bad from the coding side, but it was really bad from the testing side, because I mean there's just thousands of lines of test code, thousands
it's just
of I'm a manager and I'm trying to edit someone that's not on my team. I'm an assistant and I'm trying to edit someone that's on my team. It's just like all the different cases.
No, it's true. There really is an analogy here with like even typed languages and tests. Like if you worry about that stuff, like the right solution is not actually to write a bunch of unit tests. It's to like add type annotations or something like that, right? I know they're not a substitute, but I think there's an analogy there.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting, man. I guess at some level there's just so much complexity you can't. Yeah, and even though we wrote all those tests for Emmermap over the years, we've had bugs in Emmermap. Like we've had bugs, right? In our API server.
No, never. Yeah, I mean everything we write has bugs.
Yeah, so that's just I'm like arguing in my head with the voice in my head with someone who's repping the other point and saying like those tests are good and valuable, and of course they are. But I think the point is like this is not. It's about trade-offs. It's about, and you can't analyze it in a vacuum. It's compared to what, It's compared to what, and it's possible that even though giving you complete control over the code for your backend in this way that lets you write these tests could in some sense give you more ability to verify all these different flows. It also gives you more ability to mess up, to screw it up, and more points of failure and more code that you maintain. And also a lot of this stuff, the complexity lives in the integration, right? The integration with Pundit and the API layer or the serialization layer or whatever. So there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, basically. And I would be interested, though, like someone with a complex Firebase or Amplify app with some crazy permissions. Have they basically felt that pain of like, oh, shoot, someone could see someone else's comments. How do we write a test so that this doesn't happen again? I feel like there would be, I'm sure there's ways to do this, to set up a sandbox environment with certain groups of people and make sure their interface looks a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, beyond like UI testing, right? I could set something like a Cypress test up that I log in as a user, and I go to a UI that doesn't hide all the admin functionality, and I start clicking stuff.
Yeah, that's like a layer. Even just the public pages. Have you done that yet? Have you done testing where it's like as an admin this, as a person that? What's their story for that?
I have, but I haven't done anything in Amplify for that. So that's just all local. Right.
Gotcha.
So I have like some Mirage stuff that I'm just like stealing there. It's GraphQL, so the data that comes back looks like the query that goes out.
Oh, you are using Mirage?
Yeah. And so I do that, but
Are you using the Mirage GraphQL thing that Rocky wrote?
No. I set this up before that, so I have I have to switch to that.
I think it would be. It sounds like it would work pretty well, because if you have all the queries in a file somewhere you can get at, or the types and the queries and mutations and everything, I think it will like save a ton of code. I think it literally just reads.
I can just load those in. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all those are plain old.
You don't have to write any resolvers.
That's pretty cool because when you create indexes, they give you new queries for them. And so that I can just load those queries right into Mirage and that's it.
Yeah. I think it's like pretty awesome.
Okay.
What do you mean indexes?
You have to it's like the whole Dynamo thing. You have to decide how you're going to query your data.
Whoa.
So this is another thing you end up learning pretty quickly.
The whole point of leaving the backend is so I don't have to worry about indexes anymore in any form.
No, but this is where when I guess I was like kind of vague before. When I say like the surface area is really big, this is the stuff I'm talking about. It's not.
Yeah.
It is not a. So when
it's
you
the
like
NoSQL stuff.
Yeah,
or
like
the Dynamo stuff.
When you're getting started, like I just define a schema, I get database tables, I get queries, and everything just works. And then you want to do like some filtering and you just want to do a query that does some filtering, and it starts to not work, and you have to like learn how data is indexed, how to set up indexes. The API for doing that is pretty easy. It's actually really easy, but understanding the why you need to do that is different, because like you would think like, oh, if I'm filtering data with GraphQL, I'm just going to use what is it, like a variable in my query. Yeah. But no, you have to like set up this index, and that's when it's all you have to learn about Dynamo, how it stores data, why you need to index it.
I see.
I guess it makes sense. Like I don't know.
They couldn't hide that behind something.
No, I mean no, right? Because like I don't know, I had to go down that road.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, I don't know if I'm just like repeating their talking points if I were to like explain it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, this is the way the data is stored. If you need an index, you can create a like second local index. This is how you do it. This allows you to query data like this. When you get it working, it just works. Pretty great.
Interesting.
It's a brand new query, which is kind of nice. So you have another query, find recipe by, I don't know, like what, like category.
Yeah. Cuisine.
There you go. And yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So you've been using Mirage locally?
Yes. Yeah.
Just to see like what it looks like if I'm a different person or whatever.
Yeah, to like set up my Cypress tests.
Cool.
I would say like the Mirage stuff doesn't really give me a lot of confidence, because it's not because of Mirage, it's because I don't like understand what's going on in the back end.
Yeah, so, that part of it is really like a black box almost. I mean, yeah, right. The fact that you're importing queries and using them with this API thing, as opposed to like making fetch calls with like or using like Urkel library or SWR, that's different because the boundary is like farther down the stack almost.
Yeah. It's also more too like if I don't know, like if I was just writing my own backend, I would know how it works all the way to the database. Where this is just like, okay, I know I need to structure my schema like this, and when I structure it like this is how I access the data, but I have no idea what's happening. So I might be just getting something completely wrong in Mirage.
Right. Do they have any guides on testing that you looked at, or just kind of reach for Mirage first?
So they do. You set up you can run like Dynamo locally, and this is a thing that gives you graphical. So you run that all locally, and you can create data and then query it. And that's like a good way to explore the default queries that it gives you. It's kind of hard to figure out like, how do I, get things with a filter and stuff like that. So using that is pretty good. But using it for tests, I haven't done that.
Yeah. That was my next question. Like, what would they suggest doing for tests? Like running all that stuff in like a node server? I
haven't come across anything. I don't know. I think, I don't know, because like, okay, like if you go back to like the things you get wrong or like the integration, and because there's just so much stuff behind the integration, like I think if I were building an app that I wanted to test, I'd probably set up like another Amplify environment and then like write a bunch of Cypress tests against that. And it would be slow, but that's
You'd
going to
have
give
more
me the most
confidence.
Yeah.
And how would you like programmatically seed or change the data with like a script or something like that?
Yeah, I think that, the amazing thing about AWS is there's an API for everything. So there's got to be a way to just set up a new environment, seed it with a few users. Yeah, it's good. That stuff has to be scriptable, right? Like people have been doing this stuff on AWS forever. So
right.
Now I don't know.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know if like going down this Amplify road, it saves me so much time on doing like the Auth stuff and the GraphQL stuff. But like, do I just end up in a few years spending all that time on like
testing the integration, like
just like the ops side of managing all of this AWS stuff? I don't know. I mean, I from the app development point of view, it's pretty great. Like, yeah. I have a bunch of backend code in my front end code base, and none of it is actual code, right? It's all just declarative definitions, so it's like, it's kind of feels like the best of both worlds. Like there's nothing to maintain, but it's like stuff in Git that I can just open a file and change. Yeah. So that's pretty nice.
But you don't feel like you have to manage any of the services, like in the sense that Amplify is bundling all these things. It's bundling for you. You have one Amplify app on Amplify. You don't have all these different things like Heroku apps and all this kind of stuff. But when you said like I'm managing the services, you just meant like the complexity and the fact that it's using a bunch of services. You said the ops debt or whatever.
I guess I just don't know what's going on back there. And so that's like, there's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff you can get wrong with this. Like you can log into like the user console and
like
just start,
IAM or whatever.
Not even that. There's another thing called Cognito, which is for like managing your users, and you can just start like changing stuff.
I see.
You don't know like what is this going to do to my app, right?
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. It feels good so far. We'll see.
Your the trade-off. You're trading off. It's a way higher level of abstraction. Like you're using all of their abstractions for things that you've in the past written yourself, and so you don't understand as much, but you can do a lot more, a lot faster. But it still has its costs.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You don't understand everything, but you can do a lot.
Yeah, cool. Pretty interesting, man. I'd still hate it, you think? Can you make a video course for me on it? I'll pay for it. $29.
Yeah. I think you'd like it from all the stuff it does for you, but I think you would need literally an Amplified expert that sits next to you.
Or else I would get too frustrated and just table flip.
And again,
for
like
Firebase.
Like all these services are other AWS products. Amplify is just bringing them all together. They have some like awesome CLI tools. They have an awesome getting started section, but you just end up, the surface area is really big. You end up having a deep dive. And there's definitely been nights where it's like, I know exactly what I need. If I had control of the server, I would know exactly how to get it.
Yeah.
And I just spend hours going through like contradictory GitHub issues and outdated stuff. And it's just, you have to
downside.
you have to be okay with it. And like when I started, that stuff was really frustrating. But now, after doing it a couple times, you're like, okay, I know what I'm getting myself into.
Interesting. I do kind of want to make a Firebase app just because I haven't done it in a long time. And it just seems pretty good. I just wish that it wasn't a completely proprietary data query format because I feel like that kind of sucks,
Yeah.
But it feels like, Amplify with the docs and, Hasura has some docs that they're all great services. I'm not trying to just be negative towards them, but like the onboarding and the guides and stuff like that, when you compare those things to Firebase or the Auth stuff that I did with Hasura versus, or even Auth 0 versus Firebase. Firebase is just really phenomenal with regards to that stuff,
Yeah.
and the onboarding and docs and everything. So
I mean, we built a Firebase app in 15 minutes. You
Yeah.
you can't like, from knowing nothing. It's not like, oh, I'm a Firebase expert and I came in like anyone, I can build a Rails app in 15 minutes, right?
Yes.
But from zero knowledge, it's amazing.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. So I don't like, again, back to like when I think of Amplify as like a thing that's, it's like for AWS employees to build amazing front end app, client side apps, like mobile JavaScript client side apps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's for us.
And then it's like the rest of you, if you want to act like you're AWS employees, here's like a giant book online.
People that need a lot of hand holding, and not sure if it's for us. No,
wait. I don't need hand holding. I have a low tolerance. It's not that I can't do it. I have a low tolerance and a low patience. I get very frustrated. You know this.
Yeah.
I get very frustrated very easily because I feel like when projects do it right. And so when you see it do them wrong, it's more like if I'm going to be spending this much time at the beginning getting the basic things working, then like what does that say about how the rest of the experience is going to be and what my investment is going to be and if it's going to be worth it? Now, like I get it, man. People have asked me crazy questions about Mirage, so I understand it's hard. And there's a lot of gaps there, and there's, we're trying to figure out ways that we can work on it more because there's some low-hanging fruit and everything like that. But, I mean, these are companies, you know what I mean? These are real companies. No, I'm just saying, like, Firebase does such a good job there. I should just use it. It's just that it sucks because it feels like such a big departure it feels like such a bigger jump from going from where we were writing our own APIs, to that, as opposed to writing our own servers to go into something like Hasura, because the boundaries are the same. Because I can query a Hasura API with Urkel or with SWR, but I'm not going to use either of those things to talk to my Firebase API. I'm going to use a Firebase client SDK. Mm-hmm. So it feels different. To me, that feels harder to swallow. You know what I mean? And I've even heard people talk about like, oh yeah, when you have to do like complex queries and joins and stuff with Firebase, it can get like their DSL can get annoying or whatever. Whereas I feel like Hasura is focused on like the escape hatches there, and because it's just GraphQL, there's like way more escape hatches.
Yeah, and I mean, even further with Hasura, it's a Postgres instance.
Yes, and
so the worst case scenario is you just go in there and write some SQL.
Yes, exactly. So, but Firebase has been around for a long time, man. Like, if we started making all of our apps on Firebase, when we met, 6 years ago or whatever, they'd still all be, I'm sure, running and great, and probably not a lot of debt at all. Like, there's a lot of code I've written in my past that would be much better spot today if it had just been a Firebase app,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's that. Yeah. I mean, I'm all for, again, I guess I care less about the underlying technology and the implementation stuff. So yeah, I guess like Firebase being proprietary format, mm-hmm. It doesn't bother me as much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the benefits, I think the next apps we write, we should just, how much code do we don't have to write?
Right. I know. I mean, we did that with we added one little endpoint to the REPL, but I've been using that. It's great. And it's awesome to know that it's just humming along there.
Yeah.
We have an API server running there, and there's no code. There's no Rails gems to update. You know what I'm saying? That's awesome. There's no tests that are breaking or flaky. And I just share REPL right before I got on here, and it's pretty cool. So that's pretty awesome. And we did it in like a week. Like, I want to make a little thing that like keeps track of where everyone is making Ember Map videos, and if their next idea needs a review from me, and if they've uploaded it. I mean, you could throw something together real quick that would really help out, And it's like, boom, Firebase it, Hasura it, no problem. I mean, I would just fly on the front end,
Dude, Firebase all the way there. You don't need the data format.
That's what I think I'm going to do, because I just want to do it. I also have another idea for an app. It's like back to my nutrition bullshit. Have you heard of this guy, David Goggins? We're gonna wrap up soon, by the way.
Navy SEAL
Ultra, the Navy SEAL Ultra runner.
Yeah.
he was like, he has his Joe Rogan podcast is like super inspiring. I listened to it, and this morning I got back from my CrossFit workout, and then I was like, my mind is capable of anything, and I went and ran for 3 miles because I had more energy, and I just was like, I don't actually need to stop right now, and I want to keep going. But it was also because I had just listened to this guy, and this guy freaking amps you up, dude. He will get you going. Like, you finish it, and you're like, let's go get after this shit, man. Like, seriously. But he's talking about the mind and everything, and how people rely too much on like motivation and being inspired and stuff. And he's like, that's easy. It's easy to work out when you're inspired. It's easy to eat healthy when you're feeling like, when you're not being tempted by something. It's like the moments where you don't feel like doing it are like really the only moments where you can actually make progress towards your goal. So you have to learn how to train your brain to be that, such that when that moment hits you, it's like you acknowledge that this is like a temptation or an urge, but like this is the moment where I'm either going to move towards my goal or away from it. And like, I'm just going to say, I'm only going to pick up this beer or whatever if my mind tells me to do it. I don't have to listen to my body. My body's not in control. It's my mind that gets to choose it, right? A lot of stuff that like James Clear talks about, but I had this idea for an app where you open it up and there's like a circle in the middle and you tap it and it's like, I'm having an urge or like an urge or a temptation. You just press it and then the circle splits into two, and on the left is like body and on the right is mind. And on the left it says like, I'm letting my body like control my life or something. I'm giving into the desires of my body or something like that. Maybe a little less sexual sounding. And the right says mind, something like I'm using my mind. I'm choosing to ignore the urge with my mind. I'm just choosing to do. And then like some inspirational quotes or something like that. And then you just like, you can even do it after the fact, right? Where like, oh, I resisted. Like I really wanted to go get a candy bar earlier and I didn't. That's a moment where I actually made progress. So I'm going to it's almost like I can log that. And then you can start to see like a history of all those times where it just, you're just making a good decision. It's like James Clear has this really cool quote where he's like, you're always either becoming, the person you want to be or the person you don't want to be with every decision you make. So I thought that'd be fun to like whip together with like a Firebase backend or something,
I was thinking when you're explaining this app, I'm like, well, if you just want to do like give into something, you're just not going to open the app, right? That's going to be your way that you avoid the.
No, but you have to open. But you'll open it later, and you'll know. I had a margarita last night. And I had chips and guac. The first one was okay. The second one, actually, I was okay yesterday. I did all right, but still, I was like eating the chips, and I was like, okay, if this was one of those nights I was on a date, it was like if this was one of those times where I went on like a second place and ate a lot more, then it would be like I'm moving away from my goals. And later I would have, or if I came home and like wanted to just be a jerk and like order some more food or something like that. If you did that, if I got the pizza, then the next time I look at the app, which is going to be on my home screen, I would have to say, yeah, I faced a temptation and I gave into my body. So I would have to tap it and go left. So I think it would help you in the moment if you want to like be reminded that like that would be the best way to use it, to be reminded in the moment where you're like, this is my opportunity to make a right decision so I can make progress. But I think even still, if you opened it after the fact and saw it, you're like, oh, I did just let my body win and I like moved away from my goal. I don't know. It might help. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, logging stuff helps.
Yeah. I do that with food and it does help. But sometimes it's like I get in this black and white thinking where it's like all gone, right? If you mess that up, then you just go bananas and you just like, but this is like a decision thing. Maybe that's a personality defect. I don't know.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that'd be fun. I think it'd be fun to make a new app with that, with like a Firebase backend.
Yeah. Firebase it up and you can tell me all about it.
I will. Sweet, man. Well, this is really cool. I still have your tweet up right here. This is a really neat thing. So that's what the, I meant to ask you that earlier. The owner is the person who created the thing. And then the private is just someone who is authenticated.
Logged in.
But that's their permissions for authenticated users, permissions for the authenticated and creator, and then permissions for admins. And then I'm sure you could add other like anonymous permissions or permissions for like a team of people or something like that.
Yep. They have like groups. You can add multiple owners, so you can have like an array of email addresses. If you want multiple editors, you can also have like an editor group. by the way, there's like a whole decision tree about like what type of auth system are you using, and this is where it gets nutty. But yes, this is like the simple. This is
Sam.
This Cognito users with this auth is like the simple happy path.
Yeah, this looks great.
What we need, like the types of apps that we work on.
Yeah.
It's sweet.
It looks pretty awesome, man. It looks really cool. Awesome. Shall we wrap it?
Yes.
That was fun, man. It was fun hearing about Amplify. I've been waiting to hear about that. Maybe you'll have to show me some code soon.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're having fun. Get out, get some sunshine before we plow into fall here. And I don't know, are we going to have a resurgence of COVID? I mean, that would be terrible. And the bad weather coming? That would be the worst.
I looked at a graph of cases and deaths earlier today.
How is it?
I'm not sure what a resurgence can be because it just goes up. So it's not like it was flat. And
it never came down, you're saying?
Yeah, deaths is pretty. It's like always been linear, I think. But
like in New York and stuff, it came down, right?
Yeah. I've only been looking at
U.S. or world?
U.S.
Okay, gotcha.
So I don't know.
That sucks.
Yeah. So I don't. The point I'm making is I don't know what a resurgence would. People are talking about a second wave, but I don't think we're through the first. So
yeah, you're like, we're on the crest of the first wave, everybody. We're in the barrel and the tunnel of the wave right now. Damn. Well, anyways, hope you can stay safe. Hope we can provide a little bit of normalcy here with the podcast, Talking Tech. And thank you all so much for listening. Share it with your friends if you want us to have more listeners. If you think talking about lighting on a tech podcast is a reasonable thing to do, that's the best way to get other people to find the show. So we appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.